We've been measuring the wrong thing all along. We've been measuring productivity based on time management instead of the energy we bring to what we do. And that one shift changes everything. Most of us are running on autopilot. We're checking the boxes, we're crossing things off the list, and wondering why we still feel so empty at the end of the day. My guest today, Erin Coupe, figured out why, and it's not what you think. In the next 45 minutes, Erin's going to break down why burnout is rarely your job's fault, what it actually means to turn a routine into a ritual, and the one morning habit that rewires how your brain sees your entire day. And it takes zero extra time. Hey y'all, I'm your host, Courtney Cecil, and welcome back to the Life Management System. Inside this episode, I'm excited to host Erin Coupe, an executive advisor, keynote speaker, founder of Authentically EC, and author of I Can Fit That In, which launched in October of last year. Her book serves as a framework to help high achieving professionals redefine success through intentional leadership and sustainable performance. Erin's work serving executives and organizations in high pressure environments integrates behavioral science, human centered leadership, and practical strategies to help professionals move from autopilot to alignment. So you can gather why she makes the perfect guest for us here today. So, Erin, welcome to the Life Management System.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah. Okay. So, as you know, a lot of this audience sits in corporate. And I think that before we get into the meat of the questions, I would love for you to just give a flyby of what your history in corporate looked like, just because I think it will help them appreciate and bring to life some of the experiences that you share in the questions.
Sure. Yeah, I know. It's so funny because I always say the work that I do now makes the corporate world a better place. I spent 17 and a half years in corporate America before launching my company almost 7 years ago. And a lot of that was in very high stakes, high pressure environments. I started my career in fintech at Reuters, supporting financial software on trading floors for very big investment banks. JP Morgan, the first one, Goldman Sachs, the second one. Was then asked for my resume at Goldman and started there 6 months later. And I spent almost 6.5 years at Goldman before I just completely, burned out. And I know this is a lot of the story that we're going to talk about today. And resigned from finance as a whole at almost 30, went into commercial real estate and worked largely for the most part in the next decade at CBRE and was an executive there.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. So I think that the burnout theme, to your point, is very real for many of us. And a good many of the people that tune in, the reason is because they are either nearing that or have actually hit that pivotal dip in life. So let's talk about some of the practical ways, Erin, that you recommend that people climb out, but most particularly starting with time. So you and I, one of the things that I love about the way that we orient our narrative is around debunking our relationship with time and what it really means or doesn't mean, and in ways that we give power away to it. And I think that a lot of these listeners think, time management is what I'm lacking. Time management is the key to everything. And I know that you have a very distinct point of view that I plus one a million times over. So let's start there, most particularly around this notion of reclaiming time. So you talk about reclaiming time rather than finding it. Why do you think that that language is such a critical place for people to start? And how does it really impact the way that they're going about their day to day?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of things to first, bring up. One, I believe that we've been measuring the wrong thing all along. We've been measuring productivity based on time management rather than based on the energy that we bring to what we do. So my whole thing is the operating system of how we've been showing up as humans, not just in work, but in life as a whole, has been really based on how much can we cram in and how much can we check off the list. Instead of, and this is where I really go in my work, instead of how much of ourselves are we bringing to what we do? How much of ourselves are we bringing to the relationships that we have? How much of ourselves are we bringing to the work that we do each day, or to the way that we parent, or whatever it is, our communities, our friendships, you name it. And the way that we do that is not by getting more hours in the day. That's never going to happen. But the way that we increase the energy that we bring, or how much of ourselves we bring, is through choice. When you choose intentionally that you're going to show up fully present in X space or in X relationship at this time, that is your intention. That is your choice. And that is meaning infused because you're actually intentionally choosing to do it versus, what we do, and especially in burnout mode, we are just going through the motions. We're just on autopilot going, okay, I have to do all these things. I got to check them off the list. And these are my obligations, my responsibilities. And there's no room for anything else. There's no breathing room because we're so stuck in that mode of autopilot, just reactivity, that we don't understand that we actually can create space in our lives and we can choose intentionally. So that's where the time management thing, I think, goes majorly haywire, because it becomes something that's just like, there's no more time. There's no time for me. There's no time for anything that matters. I just have to do all these things. And no one wants to live in that place. I lived in that place for a long time, and it is completely draining and it is exhausting. And that is what leads to burnout.
Yes, agreed. And that very part and parcel to the way I describe. So you use the word choice, but it's essentially, so I talk about how when you determine what it is that you value, so you're making the choice in what you value, that informs what you prioritize. And when you're clear in what you prioritize, then you know how to spend your resources being your time, your money, and your energy. But I, like you, Erin, I'm a full believer that energy matters a lot more than managing time. And if we get that right, it fixes a lot more that we're kind of giving power away when we blame it all on time. So in what you just shared, one of the other themes that I want to pull on is that we are human and there we are very integrated, complex people that make choices every day. Yes, but how does, when you think about the complexity of being a human being instead of a human doing, there are inherent choices we have to make. And one of those is how we divide our energy, if you pull on that thread a little bit, most particularly between work and life. So when you think about a fully integrated human, how might, using your language, operating system, help somebody feel more in power as opposed to feeling behind and like they're failing, whether it be at work or at home?
So yeah, we're not different people at work or at home. We're the same person. And I think like stopping that narrative that we are compartmentalized people is really important. The way that you do that is through self-awareness. So the whole first section of my book, which is, by the way, it's critical to read the introduction first and then to read, the first section. It is all about activating self-awareness, the first 3 chapters, because without self-awareness, you don't know how you're showing up. You might not even know who you are. You certainly don't know who you're becoming, right? Because without that self-awareness, you're just going through the motions, And again, I lived that life for a long time. Just I woke up each day and every day was rinse and repeat. It was Groundhog's Day. It just all looked the same. It felt the same. I navigated it all the same. And none of it was working, right? It was like on paper, it was fine, but internally, it was not fine. And for a long time, I was very good at also pointing the finger at, like, it's the job, it's the, crappy client, it's my husband, it's motherhood. Like, there were all the things I could point to that were the problems for how I was feeling in the life that I had built on paper as success, but was not really fulfilled by, or didn't feel excited by or satisfied with, right? So I think one of the big things for people, is this like integrated human and, choosing where are they giving their energy in work and in life, and how are they prioritizing, like you say, their values and what matters to them, is to not look at it like it's all separate stuff, but to look at it as just one full body of work. Each and every day, it's going to be different. But if I can choose to fit in what matters to me each day, some days my work matters more than my family. That's a given, right? It means my husband's got to pick up a little bit more of the slack in the family that day. And some days I matter more than anything, right? And I'm like, my non-negotiables today are going to be my workout, taking a nice shower, blow drying my hair. Like, some days are just like that. So each and every day, giving yourself the grace to choose to move through it and navigate it in a way that is actually meaningful for you, that meets your own needs. And I think this is another thing, and I know especially for working women, this is a problem, is that we expect our needs to be met by other people. A lot of times it may be our spouse. Sometimes it might be our friends. It just depends, right? Or an extended family member. But if we are not meeting our own needs, no one gets the best of us. So we have to be very true with ourselves around what is it that actually is something that is going to fuel me or restore me or renew my energy today. And I need to make sure that I fit that in, because that is actually something that is going to move the needle in my life. It's going to bring me energy. It's going to bring me value, right? And so people having the grace each day to just make those choices from a place of intention. And by the way, to just move through them. Don't second guess them. Just do it, right? Just do it instead of feeling, oh my God, I feel guilty that I like did a workout in the middle of the day, or oh my gosh, I feel guilty that like I signed off at 4:30 to take my kid to their practice. Like, let's just stop with the guilt, and turn that off. And I have ways in the book to start to work with that internally within yourself. But the moment that you choose something intentionally and you fit that into your life and you realize, gosh, I actually felt really good that I did that. It all compounds over time. It helps you understand within yourself. Okay, so the guilt is not really me. It's just showing up as a sign, as a sort of a reflection of something that I started to do differently.
Yeah, I literally just before we got off this, started recording this, Erin, got off a call with a client, and this was almost the exact narrative in the conversation we were having. And I explained to her, like, this is a muscle that you build, and it's continuing to rewrite that narrative in your head over and over until you really start to believe it. And the biggest theme of what I pulled from what you just said, Erin, is part of that is shifting from an accountability mindset or a victim mindset to an accountability mindset. Because when you are choosing to hold your power, when you are choosing to not expect other people to solve your problems, when you are choosing to take action, then you hold the power as opposed to giving it away. And I think that in itself is very empowering.
It is. Yeah. I mean, even the theme of burnout in general, for so long, we have pointed to the job, the boss, the clients, the work as the reason for burnout. And I actually think that's a fallacy. Now, if you're in a toxic job or you have a toxic boss, then you got to find something else to do. That's a given, right? And I have been in those scenarios. So I know what that's like, and that's very real, but that's a personal responsibility to find yourself a different gig. If that's not the case and you're pointing the finger at those things, I actually challenge people to point the finger inward and to look at the amount of disconnection and the amount of distraction in their lives. Because
Yeah.
typically that's where the burnout is actually stemming from, is that
Yep.
they're not feeding themselves in the ways that they actually want to and can. They're just not making those choices.
Exactly. Yeah, I asked the same client. I said, I normally don't do one-on-ones. Most of my clients funnel into group, but I was sensing her feeling stuck. So I turned the mirror back and said, okay, she was explaining that people weren't respecting her boundaries. She just came back from work for their second kid. People weren't expecting her boundaries. And I said, well, has anybody set that expectation of you? Has anybody specifically asked you to do this? Have you, do has anybody expressed that they were disappointed that you didn't respond at X, Y, and Z time? And it's like, oh, no. Like it's disruptive sometimes realizing that we give more of ourselves away than we often give credit for. And I will, of course, in the show notes link both your book, Erin, and then I have a podcast episode around why I believe that managing your energy matters more than managing your time. For anybody interested, I will also link that in the show notes. So continuing to pull in the same thread, you do a lot of work inside organizations. You work with a lot of individuals as well. Like, what alarm bells do you look for? What signs are there that someone is absolutely starved for energy, and like, maybe they're hitting those marks, as you said, like burnout tends to happen because we are kind of, we're chugging along. But what might some of those signs and alarm bells be that someone's headed into more burnout territory?
Yeah. I mean, one of the big things is language. I mean, how did they talk about their life? How do they talk about their work? If someone is constantly, negative towards their life or their work, then that's a good place to see that they're fatigued by it, they're exhausted by it. A lot of times decision making starts to become really fuzzy and they're not making decisions as easily, or they're just not making decisions at all. That's where like their cognitive load is just getting way too full. and they're not clearing out the space mentally that they need in order to make better decisions. Yeah, that lack of clarity in general. So some people might be like, oh, I just, I feel like something's missing, but I just don't know what, or like, or they'll make that comment of like, I just don't know who I am. I don't have any goals anymore. Like those kinds of things are just that like lackluster sort of outlook that I think is a big sign of disconnection and distraction. Like I said before, I'm not a coach and I don't want to be. And, the executive advisory work that I do is really about creating common language for teams of people to start to show up with more capacity, with higher energy levels, and then to create sustainable performance, not burnout performance, right? Not something that just looks good on paper, but is actually real and fulfilling from the inside out. And so those are some of the things that might show up in some of the work that I'll do with people in a group setting where I'll ask them those questions, right? Like, how are you showing up? And when they really go granular and they start to understand that it is their decision making, or they are exhausted, or they are going through the motions. Like those are the kinds of things where it's just like, okay, then we start to look at the choices they make each day. And when you start to look at choices they're making each day and how those impact their team, how those impact the way that their team is interacting with them, how those impact the way that their family interacts with them, right? Then you start to kind of go from just the self to the impact around them. It's all a web, it's all a ripple effect. And so when you look at, okay, so this is how it impacts my team, and then this is how it impacts my family. And then you make these small shifts, these small tweaks, and then you start to see that impact, right? And how it improves. Does it increase your energy levels? Does it enhance your capacity? Because now you feel like you're more productive in your days because all of a sudden you actually do have more energy and you're making more intentional choices, right? And when you do that, you're like, oh, this actually feels pretty good. And so now that that feels pretty good, why not do that over here in my personal life? And so these are things that actually that start to really enhance that web or grow that web of impact, of energy, of capacity, of performance, and really help to overall to bring some growth or some better objectives for an organization as a whole. So, I don't think that there's any one thing that you can look at in one person and say, this is your problem, let's fix it. It's up to them to actually recognize what that is, right? And it's just as far as the work that I do, because it's not coaching, but as far as the work that I do, it's about leading people into a new rhythm, into a new way of operating that is more meaningful for them.
Yeah. One of the things that I know I'm guilty of too is wearing busy like a badge of honor.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
think that there's something in that narrative too that we superimpose this pressure on ourselves that we really are strained in every corner of our life.
Yeah.
But yet so much of that is our narrative and us not actually giving ourselves to have breathing room that actually is there if we choose to step into it.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, I lived that life for a long time. It was just like, oh yeah, like I work at Goldman Sachs, I work 15-hour days. Like, look how important I am. And it's such a joke, right? I
Yeah.
mean, wearing busyness as a badge of honor is, first of all, it actually makes me feel icky at this point, right?
Yeah.
And again, I used to do that, so I know what it's like to be in that mindset. But I don't think it's inspiring to watch someone talk about how busy their life is. And in fact, it's those people I have so much compassion for these days, right? Because I'm like, I get it. Like, I know, like, life is
Yep.
demanding and it's never not going to be demanding,
Yep.
So rather than be a victim to that and let that have a grip on you, make some shifts in your life that help you feel like you are in more control of yourself as
Yes.
life is placing its demands on you, right? Because it's not going to stop. It's relentless. That's what life is. But it's also a gift, right? Like we get to move through a life that needs us and wants us and relies on us. That's not a bad thing, and in fact, imagine your life without any of that. And I don't know about you, but like that's not planet Earth, first of all. But secondly, that kind of feels pretty bleak if no one needs you, if no one relies on you, if there's nothing that is, waiting for you to work with it or create it. That sounds very glim to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the other things that you just called attention to that's worth punctuating is the notion of focusing on what's in your control. Because oftentimes we have a tendency to focus on things like the weather or the traffic that are out of our control. We can't change that stuff. There are things we can change though. And when you place your energy on the things that you can control, again, it's empowering. Like you get to step into a place where you are making the choice as a like you are the accountable party as opposed to being the victim to it.
That's so true. One of the phrases that I say is, not to ask for permission, beg for forgiveness later if you need to, right? So like make your choice and make it from a place that is true to who you are. Don't make it from a place that's like condescending or resentful. That's never going to end well. Eventually it will bite you. But make it from a place that is centered and grounded. And you're making that choice because you know that it's going to move the needle for you in some way, shape, or form. And when you do that, most of the time you realize not only did you not need to ask for permission, and so you're glad you didn't, but you also end up not having to ask for forgiveness either, right?
Yep, exactly. Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit. Lately, I've seen a lot of content from you, Erin, on this notion of a routine versus a ritual. And I know you have some opinions there that I would love for you to bring to life for the audience.
Mhm.
So, first of all, can you distinguish the two? And then I would love for you to also, kind of bring to life what the difference is in a very practical way. Like pick apart a typical morning and what the difference between a routine or a ritual might look like and how it can impact the rest of the day.
Yeah. And for anyone who's read the book, this is going to be very clear for them. I have an entire chapter on this topic. And the whole second section of the book is about ritualizing your life and really transforming routines into rituals. So I have a framework around that as well. Um, the way that I break this down, and I purposely do it, is we've been given so much content over the last 30 years around habit stacking and productivity and routines, right? And like, the 5 a.m. club and like all those things. And it's not that those didn't have the right intentions, because I believe that they always have had the right intentions, but eventually a routine becomes very numbing. You become almost drained by it and numb to it because it becomes autopilot at some point. It just becomes something that requires zero thought and zero intention. And it's just something you do to check the box. And you just do it because it's what you've always done, right? Like that's what happens with routines. So I believe they have like the right goal in mind initially, but within a short amount of time, they become very numbing or very draining. Whereas a ritual, on the other hand, is very distinct in that you are choosing it with intention. So automatically it requires your awareness and your presence. Think about that. If you are aware and present as you are moving through an activity or as you are choosing to give your energy to something, you are going to feel completely different about that than if you are totally like in a different place mentally, not present, and completely unaware and bored with what you're doing. It's going to have a completely different effect on the way that you feel about what that activity is. So that is one of the biggest differentiators: meaning infused versus autopilot, right? Intentional and present and aware versus kind of unaware, bored, just going through the motions. So like in an everyday scenario, like one of the ones I always talk about, which is just so practical and simple and also requires zero time, is just in your own mind. When you wake up in the morning, what are you thinking? Are you setting an intention for your day? Or are you going, oh God, I got to do this all over again? Right? Just that right there, the difference in I'm going to intentionally be in my mind and choose, how do I want to feel today? How do I want to show up? What is my experience of life going to be today? Versus, oh, I just got to do this all in. I'm just going to pick up my phone and just start scrolling because it's just what I do. It's just what I do. It's just a routine, a habit that I move through each morning. One of the things that I like to give people as an anchor is when you make your coffee or tea, what do you do when that happens? Do you pick up your phone and start scrolling? Or do you use that time and sit down and maybe write a few pages in your journal? Or do you think through something that you want to, do that day? Do you actually visualize yourself in the big pitch you have that day or in the difficult conversation you have to have that day, and visualize it going well? Because why not? Why think through everything that's going to happen negatively when you could actually visualize it going really well for yourself? So these are like little tiny shifts on that time that you would otherwise just squander away because you just always do it. This is just the way you do things. And you ritualize that time by just choosing something different. And by the way, you're always in your mind. So you can just use your time there more wisely, right? Like this is not something that you're going to have to like, oh, I have to overhaul my life. And now I need to do these 7 things, which is what routines typically do as well. They're like, oh, you got to do it this way and at this time. And if you don't do it, you feel like you failed. No, a ritual, you choose it. You choose it when you want it, right? And you design a new one when you want to, and you iterate it when you want to, and it's yours. And whether that's with another person, or it's with a colleague, or it's with yourself, or it's with nature, whatever rituals you have in your life, you get to evolve them as you choose to. They're not
Yeah.
something that have to be set in stone.
What I hear you saying and the language that I usually use is you play offense and not defense. Like you actually choose, going back to your choice language, Erin, like you choose to engage as opposed to just, sitting back and letting life happen to you. It's just it's a very empowering place to be. I did a lot of work, coming out of the pandemic. I owned future of work at my old company, but also have built the back 15 years of my career on culture transformation. And rituals are something that I focus on heavily because, to your point, it doesn't have to be just you. It could be with nature, it could be with your team, it could be with your partner or your kids. So that's the space in which it's showed up for me, is building sticky relationships inside particularly intact teams. So right now, the push of return to office in very hard parameters has me like really getting squeamish inside. I have strong opinions about it because I am such a believer that propinquity, which is the act of creating this sense of closeness, can exist if you are intentional about it. And you become intentional, to your point, Erin, when you introduce rituals, when you choose to do something as opposed to just going through rhythms and mindlessly. And that's where I believe organizations get it wrong, is they're trying to check the easy box as opposed to putting energy into the things that will really move the needle for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's so funny because I feel like, I've put this movement on the map of rituals, and it's like, it's not something like people used to talk about rituals just as like very flippantly with like a ceremony type of thing or something religious. And my whole thing is like, no, like that's actually like not at all how we should talk about rituals at this point in the modern era of, what we live in. We need to talk about them as something that it is an intentional act, but it's also something that we design, right? We design with other people. We design it because it's going to do something for us, right? And like collectively, like you're saying with culture, when an organization starts designing rituals and they're intentionally infusing these, whether it's in meetings or it's in the way that they run their, inbox strategies. And, I saw one organization use NNTR as a header of each subject line. If they're sending a email and it's like, there's no need to respond, but like, I'm just sending this, right? Because people's inboxes are insane, and you don't want to feel like you have to read every single thing every single day in order to be productive. And so if you could be even more productive by going, gosh, the time I would otherwise spend reading 300 emails, maybe I only have to read 250 now. And those other 50, I'll get to those this weekend, right? When I choose to. So like little things like that, but like that's a ritual. That is something that is like, okay, it has purpose, it has intention, it has meaning, because it is doing something for everybody on that team or in that organization that is going to give them more energy, give them time, help them reclaim time, and navigate their days a little bit different.
Yeah, I love that. So when you think about yourself, Erin, surely as you have graduated out of the chronic stressed life that you lived in financial services and started rebuilding your own life, what are some of the rituals that you've introduced for yourself that you believe have made a big difference?
Yeah, I mean, the whole book is full of this stuff because, I mean, this is not just things I've done in my own life. It's things that I have done with thousands of people at this point via the work that I do. So, some of the things that are critical to me, and my rituals have evolved over time, and they will always continue to evolve because there's no such thing as arriving at a place of perfection. We're always going to change and morph as as we grow, as we mature, as we gain experience, like all the things as life changes, right? One of the things I first started when I really started to use I can fit that in as a phrase of empowerment for myself. And it is an empowerment phrase, and it's all through the book. I can fit that in is not about cramming, choosing better, right? So when I first started to say to myself, I can fit in what matters to me. And what matters to me today is meditation, right? That meant a lot of days when my kids were young, I was getting up a lot earlier because I wanted to be able to meditate for at least 10 minutes. And by the way, I wanted to write down whatever I heard in my meditation, whatever thoughts were there. I wanted to write that down. I wanted something to come back to and look at over time and actually see, like, gosh, what does come up for me most often, and then be able to work with that. And that's where I was starting to rewire limiting beliefs. That became a ritual. Looking at some of the thoughts that were actually coming up the most and going, why do I believe that? Like, what does that even mean for me? How did that get into my own mind? And then I would write something I want to believe instead. And then I would start to ritualize saying that to myself, seeing that written down, and just implanting that new belief, right? So that is something I always do. I think we are like onions. We are so layered and so complex as human beings. There are so many limiting thoughts and beliefs in our minds. And it's almost like you can kind of peel the layers back and go through those. And that's something I love doing. And so I'm always finding new ones. And when I find new ones, I work on it. I turn it into a ritual. And a few days a week, I'm going to meditate about that. I'm going to write about that. And I'm going to work on my new thought, my new belief. It just takes time and repetition, right? My mornings are crucial. The way that I brew my coffee and set an intention for my day, whether I'm saying I'm excited for today, or I'm abundant, or I feel this, or I feel that, I am telling myself what it is that I want to experience that day. The cool thing about that, and I will never give up this ritual, it will never change. It is so purposeful just as it is. When you do that for yourself, when you just say, I am this, or I feel this, you are telling yourself automatically that that is your experience. Now, your brain, from a neuroscientific perspective, will utilize confirmation bias to show you more of that throughout your day. Like, it will show you reasons to feel excited. It will show you reasons to feel abundant. It will show you reasons to feel whatever it is that you claim that that's what you want to feel that day. But you can't be wishy-washy about it. You can't be like, oh, I hope that I feel, no, like, claim it, say it to yourself, and then allow life to do what it does, which is to show you that you can and will feel that or experience that.
Yeah, that conscious bias you're talking about, I call it selective perception. It's essentially the same thing. It's you choose what you are conditioned to be thinking about. It's kind of like driving a new car off the lot and never seeing it, and then all of a sudden seeing it every time you turn around.
Yeah,
it's a
exactly.
very
That is
similar.
what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, I have rituals around movement. Like, every day I have movement in my life. Like, I have to move my body because it fuels me so much. And so that looks different every day. Some days it's more restorative practices like yoga or Pilates. Some days it's just a walk. Some days I might go for a run. Like, it really just depends. I really listen to my body. I really listen to my nervous system, and what do I need today from a movement perspective to feel the most fueled.
Yeah, and again, going back to choice, you are choosing to do that. Like, you are saying to yourself, I value movement because I know I'm at my best with it.
Yeah.
And therefore, I'm going to prioritize it. And therefore, I'm going to spend my time and energy on making sure that happens. Like,
Yes,
that thread continues to pull.
exactly.
So, to take us home before we get to the lightning round questions, Erin, I guarantee there's a listener that's tuned in right now that's saying, okay, I am buying what she's putting down. And you're also going to go buy the book, right? Whoever's thinking that, you're going to go buy her book too. But for that person who's thinking, like, I'm getting it, like, I'm picking up what she's putting down, but I don't really know where to start. Do you believe that intention is the perfect place for her, that daily intention? Or is there something else that she might want to think about?
Yeah, that's a great place to start. I'd be remiss if I didn't say, you kind of need to do the self-awareness stuff first. Because if you don't even realize how you're showing up and why, right? You just kind of feel this level of disconnection or this level of something's missing. That's a very valid feeling. And again, I've been there, but you have to be self-aware about what it is first so that you can actually point the finger inward for a change. And that's a level of personal responsibility that's not easy for people to step into. And it's why, again, I start the book with self-awareness, and I give very distinct exercises that you can work through for that self-awareness. And it's simple stuff, but it's so purposeful for people to move through that first. And when you do move through that first, then you understand when you are putting rituals into your life and you're using the framework to change some routine ways of being into ritualized ways of being, then you understand what it's doing for you. And then you
Yeah.
kind of feel those changes and those shifts a lot more intensely than you otherwise would. So if you're just trying to, it's almost like putting a Band-Aid on something versus going to the root, right? Now, the important thing about self-awareness is it's not self-analysis. This isn't therapy, right? Like, I'm not a clinician, don't want to be. You're not going backwards to like, what happened when I was 5 that like makes me who I am today? Like, by all means, go and do that work if that's, something that you feel like you need. But what I'm doing is helping people start where you are now and think about where you're going. Like that's what's really, really crucial about this work that I do is we're in the present and we're looking forward. We're not looking backward.
Yeah. That is very similar to the type of work that I do when I help people build a life management system. It's we're going to get really clear on what it is that you want to what like when you fast forward to your 80s, what are you wanting your family and friends to be saying about how you show up for them and the type of life you lived. And we're going to pull that string back. And that's going to help inform what you actually value creating for yourself right now. So you can step into that and begin prioritizing the things that will honor those specific values. The same type of thinking applies inside an organization or probably even teams. Like I get the sense that you do a lot of teamwork, Erin. And I imagine that there's some curation that also applies there too.
Yeah.
So, to bring us home to the lightning round questions, first of all, what is your go-to stress busting activity?
Oh gosh, I mean movement for sure. If I feel stress, movement. I also love hot salt baths. I find them just so relaxing, and I read a book, and it's like a very chill way of being. That's just
Yeah.
hey, 30 to 45 minutes in the tub can do a whole lot of good.
Do you feel like the salt is a placebo, or do you feel like it really makes a difference for you?
It really makes a difference. There's a lot of energetic practice to that. Salt energetically kind of pulls away negative energy. So I believe deeply in that. I'm actually a Reiki master, and so I'm really into energy dynamics. I don't practice on people, but myself and my family. But yeah, I know a lot about just kind of, quantum mechanics and energy and things like that. And so I have a lot of belief in it.
Good. Okay. And then next, what's the last book or podcast you really loved?
Oh gosh. Podcasts, I am all over the place. I listen to like so many different things randomly when I'm out on a walk. And so I literally will just kind of like with a book, I have certain books, like for example, The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer, which I quote in my book. That is the book that is like a companion guide for me. And a lot of people are saying my book is a companion guide for them, right? Like it's a lifelong resource. It's not just a beach read and you're done with it. But when I open a book like that, I can just open to any page and it's like, "Ah, that's exactly what I needed to hear today." I feel the same with podcasts. I'll just like go through all these shows that I have and I'll just like land on one. And I'm like, that's exactly what I needed to hear today. So like it might be something like Smartless, for example, which I think is just hilarious. And I just needed to hear it. And then other times it might be like a true crime one. Like it's just like I just needed to like let my mind go for a little bit, and just not
Yeah.
fixate on certain things. Um, I'm actually a part of a book club, and it's so funny because we're reading Let Them by Mel Robbins, of which, of course, I've heard so much about. And it cracks me up because people will a lot of times say, like, oh, you remind me of like a Mel Robbins. And I'm like, yeah, but like a decade younger and like without the anxiety. Right. And so I'm like kind of like a Martha Stewart meets Mel Robbins, but without jail time and without anxiety. But so I think that's pretty funny. So like reading her book, I can see some parallels with like using a phrase to really anchor yourself in empowerment and to move yourself out of victimhood. And that's exactly what her phrase "let them" does, right? Or "let me" does. So yeah, so I'm kind of enjoying seeing some parallels in her work and my work right now.
Yeah, I bet. Okay.
Yeah.
Next, if you could wave a magic wand, what task would you eliminate forever?
If there were one thing, I would just say like home ownership in general. Like it is really not easy. There's always
Yep, my
something.
sister just put her house on the market for that very reason. They looked back and they're like, "Oh my gosh, we have spent every corner of the past 3 years, like every single second of free time has been
A
sucked into
lot.
this house. Like,
Yeah.
good
The time, the
riddance."
money, the
Yep.
energy, there's always something.
Yep. Yep. Okay. That's the first I've heard that one, but I really like it. Okay, last question for you, Erin. How do people reach you?
So erincoupe.com, erincoupe.com is my website. That's the best way. I am very active on LinkedIn. That's my preferred place for social media, but I also do Instagram, which is authentically EC.
Perfect. And I will link all of that in the show notes. Well, Erin, it has been an absolute pleasure having you here. And then for everybody else that's tuned in, thanks for continuing to show up every week for us. And I will link Erin's contact information, her book, episode 73 that I recorded around energy management versus time management. I will also link my boundaries quiz. So if you are hearing us talk and you're thinking, okay, I get that productivity hacks will not solve things for me, but I feel like I'm leaking time and energy, then maybe if you start with a clue where that is happening. But until friends, if nobody's told you lately, you're doing a great job. You've got this, mama. If what Erin shared today clicked for you, especially the part about measuring the wrong thing, episode 73 is exactly where to go next. That's my solo episode where I break down why burnout isn't a scheduling problem. It's actually an energy allocation problem and what to do about it. Link is right below.